Hello and welcome to episode 86 of the Brass Junkies. I'm your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by accomplished euphonium soloist, Lance LaDuke. Lance, how are you?
I feel old.
You should feel old because we're about to talk about a major accomplishment that you had, like, how many decades ago?
That's what I mean. It was there's a little symmetry here. So it was in 1986, and this is episode 86. See what I did there?
Boy, that's like cosmic, man. That's crazy.
Will it air as number 86? Well, that's a good question. Well, these are the questions. I don't know.
Will it air as 86? What the hell does that even mean?
Well, I mean, we have a couple of them in the can, and we were going to put them in a certain order, and then be the 86th one.
Dude, I already did the math, man.
Oh, wow. See, look at you.
I'm ahead of you, man.
You're like a professional podcaster.
Is that? I've been trying to put my finger on what I've been feeling. Is that what it is?
Well,
indigestion.
Depends on where you're putting your finger.
Oh. Speaking of which,
I like it already.
So no, you're gonna really like this. So I had to take an antibiotic last week, and I'm reading the warning label, and it says number 1 says drink tons of water, like with this medicine, like it said lots of water. I was like, okay. And then the second one was don't lie down within 10 minutes of taking this. just kind of seems a little sketchy, but then not nearly as sketchy as the third and final warning, which is this medicine may cause diarrhea even weeks or months in the future.
Whoa. How about that?
So I got to be on guard all summer long. It's like 4th of July, and I'm like, and somebody's like, "Hey, how you doing, Hitz?" Like, I think I'm okay.
So far, so good.
Weeks or months in the future. That's a warning label right there, man.
You know how in factories they have like this running took days without an injury.
And I just want to know, like, how many months? Like, when can I congratulate myself? You know, like.
Well, and how will you know? I mean, let's say there was a Mexican buffet in like late August. One of my students said that exact same thing. They're like, "How are you going to know that you shouldn't blame the burrito?" I think he said. It's like I don't know. Yeah. Well, there you go. See, and actually, just to keep things classy, I have actually it's here somewhere. I have a prescription for my first colonoscopy, which I'm going to get this summer, which will be fun.
We're actually going to live stream that for our patrons.
Katie Couric. Actually, if you're Jimmy Kimmel, Katie Couric accompanied Jimmy Kimmel to his. It's really funny. The video is up on YouTube. It kind of cracked me up and got me over the hump, as it were, about doing this, because it's not like, oh, you know what would be fun today? Yeah, that's not on anybody's list. But you know, I'm of an age, so I have that to look forward to this summer as well. So I feel for you.
This has absolutely nothing to do with anything we are talking about or we're going to talk about. But
what are we talking about?
Jimmy Kimmel just reminded me that one of the best pranks I've ever heard anybody pull on somebody was Bill Simmons was at a party at Jimmy Kimmel's house, and Bill Simmons. This was in the relatively early days of Twitter, not super early, but like before Jimmy was on Twitter. So this was probably like 2010, 2011. So there's a whole bunch of people on Twitter, but not everybody. And he got a hold of his phone, and he not only signed Jimmy up for Twitter, but he turned notifications, both email and push notifications, on, including every time someone followed him. And he then announced from his account, which already had over 1 million followers, "Hey, everybody, Jimmy is on Twitter." And then he handed it back to him. And Kimmel's phone was literally a brick for like an entire day. Like it was not usable because the notifications were, because he had like 100,000 followers in an hour. And so he just couldn't, it broke his phone.
That's pretty good.
And he didn't know the password, so he couldn't go in and change the notifications off. That's quality right there. That's pretty good. So that's like actually one more, and then we're actually going to get to the episode. So this was before your time, and maybe I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but maybe not. One of my favorite moments in Boston Brass van history was early in my tenure when Jeff Connor got a cell phone. We all had cell phones, and but Jeff got a new phone, and it was the same phone. It was like a Nokia something. It was the same phone that JD had, and JD somehow, I don't know what Jeff Connor was thinking. This is all Jeff's fault. But JD said something to the effect of, "Hey man, can I look at your phone because I want to make sure that that the factory settings are the same as mine," or something like that. And Jeff was like, "Oh yeah, sure, no problem. Here's my phone," and then and unlocks it for him. And then JD goes into the settings and to type some things, and then hands the phone back to Jeff. And then Jeff looks at it and he goes, "Hey, what did it? Turn it back. And he had switched it to Portuguese. He had switched all of the instructions to Portuguese. And so Jeff got really mad and he said, "Turn my phone back to English." And JD said, "Jeff, I don't speak Portuguese. I can't do that." And Jeff got Jeff got so mad, and he had to take his own phone and had to take JD's phone and figure out, okay, I hit 2 over here and then hit 2, and it took him like half an hour to get his phone back in English. So isn't that love?
Pretty good.
I don't know, man. I don't speak Portuguese.
Hannah's son switched Hannah's car, the dashboard. You can put it in different languages, and he put that in Spanish for a while.
That's good.
She was likewise annoyed.
At least that's your offspring. You're partly responsible there. Yeah. This was just on Jeff for handing JD his phone. I don't think that never happened ever again. So
yeah, weird.
Yeah, right. All right. So what are we here for?
Jeff to just learn Portuguese.
Yeah, well, that would have been one way to do it. That would have come in handy when we were in Macau. I remember ordering at a restaurant, and the guy didn't speak a word of English, and I didn't speak either Mandarin or Portuguese, and it was an uphill battle. Yeah, it was an uphill battle. I got something.
Good ice wine.
I got something that tasted good enough. So, yep. There you go. All right. So, what are we doing here, Lance?
Well, we're doing the listener's choice episode.
Right,
the most recent listener's choice.
Inside the Falcone competition.
How about that?
Who did we get this from?
Russ Edders. Russell Edders, who
gives us all of our good ideas.
He gives us all of our good ideas. And he asked about how this all sort of comes together. But before we launch into that, I want to thank the folks at the Mary Papert School of Music at Duquesne University for helping be sponsors of our show. If you're interested in more information about the brass area at Duquesne University, you can click on the link below. And very, very special thanks to Jim, my Sharona Nova, for helping make that happen. Ooh, pretty one.
And we also,
when you're going to give me some time, Sharona Nova.
We also want to thank Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for the Brass Junkies. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the mouthpiece. It's all you need to be an artist. And the Lance LaDuke model euphonium mouthpiece. That's all you need to do to be a model, is to get the Lance LaDuke model euphonium mouthpiece. Ow. Find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. What do we want to have people email Michael with this week?
Does he have mouthpieces for Helicons? Tom Holtz will be happy to know. Does he have a dedicated Helicon mouthpiece?
That's pretty good. Yeah, we can call it the Holtzinator or something like that. Yeah. Please, we're
That's
serious.
all right.
Email Parker through parkermouthpiece.com and ask him if even 2 people in the same day ask him if there is a Helicon mouthpiece. That's going to be funny. So please be one of the 2, or better yet, one of the 22 people who email him asking about Helicon mouthpieces. It's a form you can fill out, so you can the return address can be creative. There's a creative outlet for you. It's whatever the return address you put on there. So
Working for you, people.
exactly. So. All right. So now getting back to, and also
The
we
Patreon people?
we were, I keep on wanting to cut the Patreon, the pitch out. We just recorded the bonus episode for this one, before we recorded this one, actually.
Wait, what?
Yeah, we did. So, and it was, there was some really good stuff. We talked about like approaches to students and taking auditions and how we approach it as teachers, and it was some good stuff. And also included the conversation that Lance had with one of my students, a crazy deep dive on how Lance prepared for his Air Force band, his successful audition for the United States Air Force band in 1991. And it's crazy when you hear what he did every single day, and he had access to the band office. Where were you? What school? Akron?
University of Akron. Go
Yeah.
Zips.
and that he was there either preparing mentally or physically or spiritually from 9 p.m. until 3 a.m. every day. And it's great. It's like 45 minutes long. And it's worth its weight in gold. So any of you who go to patreon.com/thebrassjunkies, you can sign up for as little as $1 an episode, which means $26 for the whole year. Then you get a bonus episode every other week. So this is an every other week podcast, and the weeks in between, we always have a bonus episode with the person who was just interviewed, where they keep on talking about other stuff, and sometimes it gets even looser if that's possible. And this one, since it's a listener's choice, we included that other bonus material and threw a new intro and stuff. But we love our patrons. We're now over $100 an episode, and it's awesome. So thank you to all of you. And
thank you.
Yeah. And for everybody that went to iTunes, you rock, and left us a rating and review. I think that's it for the intros here. And Will Houchin, you're the man. He's our producer. He's the best.
It's true.
It is true.
He gave us the sign off on the Mark Gould. He was like, yeah, there's not enough swearing on that one.
Yeah. He said,
what's the problem?
He said, I don't think you guys talked about politics and religion enough, actually. So, yeah, good. So, inside the Falcone competition.
Russell Edders was curious about. He was actually. I should preface it by saying he was incredibly professional about his questioning, and said that he just sort of wanted to know what goes on behind the scenes. He wasn't asking for any kind of secret sauce stuff, but he just sort of was curious about what the process is like. And I can tell you, I mean, it's one of these times we should have we should have another Falcone episode where we have like Marty Erickson and a variety of other people who've been involved with the festival. Phil Cinder, my old teacher. But
first,
what do you want to know first? You want to go?
Let's get out of the way first. My experience with the Falcone competition is that one year, Marty Erickson asked me if I could help judge the taped round, and I wanted to do it, but I was too busy, and so I said, unfortunately, I couldn't do it, and that is my full extent of experience with the Falcone competition. So,
wow,
yep,
that's pretty good.
It is pretty good.
Do you want to start current and work backwards, or start at the beginning and work forward?
How
or
about
you want to jump around?
How about let's hear about your experience with Falcone back in the 1800s.
Yeah. Well, I was fortunate enough to be the first winner of the student level of the Falcone competition. And I say fortunate because, as Andrew has intimated, it was much easier to do so in that first year.
I think I just I just busted on you there in the bonus episode. That's to follow. So
still,
yeah. So yes,
still accurate. No matter when you hear it, that's still true.
Being born when he was, so that he was able to win, since it's a lot harder now. So, yep.
So I'll back up even a little bit earlier. So Leonard Falcone was the director of bands and taught low brass at Michigan State University, my alma mater, for 40 plus years.
Jeez.
And was a legendary figure, well, certainly on the euphonium, but definitely also in the state of Michigan in terms of music education. He and his brother Nicholas Falcone both came over from Roseto Valfatore, Italy. I believe that's the right. I don't know. Someone will yell at me because I didn't say the right city. But he and his brother both came over, and Nicholas ended up being the director of bands at University of Michigan, and Leonard became the director of bands at Michigan State. As it turned out, like they settled in the Detroit area. And then both jobs were open. Now, this might be apocryphal, but the story I've heard is that both of those university jobs were open. Nicholas had a family. Leonard was not yet married. So Leonard said, why don't you stay here and I'll go up to Lansing? And so the two of them ended up at those institutions for decades. Actually, Leonard played, I might be confused about this too. It could have been Nicholas, but Leonard played violin as well, and was the concertmaster for what became the Detroit Symphony. It was just sort of a theater orchestra. But anyway, so a legendary figure.
At any point, you could just start making stuff up, and I won't know.
That's good.
We might have already hit that point. I don't know. Yeah, he played. He was in a gypsy band, and that later became the Berlin Philharmonic. And
well, he's actually. I mean, it's one of these things where his the history surrounding him, the stories are such that I'm telling you the stories that I heard, sure, and whether they're accurate or not. I mean, it's that kind of figure. He just sort of cast a wide swath in terms of in people's minds, and he influenced. I mean, just generations of people.
Well, and oral histories handed down are notoriously inaccurate, but there's not. I mean, if there's this kind of stories about this guy and this kind of variety, it means that he did a whole lot of stuff, because people who just did one thing and didn't do it all that well don't have grandiose tales handed down from generation to generation about all the different things they did. So cool.
Sure. Well, and he taught, Marty Erickson, and he taught Roger Barron, and he taught Tom Gillette, and he taught, just dozens and dozens of people. Earl Lauder, Bob Jorgensen, all these incredible people.
There you go.
Yeah. And so he also taught my band director, Richard Hemer. And so when I was switching from the trumpet to the euphonium in high school, I asked about getting some lessons, and my teacher said, I don't give lessons anymore, but here is everything you need to know. And he gave me Leonard Falcone and his baritone, which was Leonard's first album, and the music that was being played on that album, like all the sheet music for the tunes that were on that.
One bell or two bells?
Single bell. He had this bell front con, I think. See, again, this is one of these things where I'm going to get yelled at.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you lots of technical questions so you get yelled at.
And actually, that horn he used to keep in his this. I've heard this from a number of people. He didn't have there wasn't a horn stand, so he had a small metal trash can that he put a pillow in, and he could set his horn down in it. Because it was bell front, so he couldn't put it on the bell, which a lot of players do. So he would set it down in this trash can. And on a number of occasions, there would be a new custodian, and they would throw his horn out. And so Marty Erickson has some great stories about how to jump into dumpsters and fishing out his Marty, could you get my baritone? It's in the dumpster. So he would have to go again. But I heard that from a variety of people that was a not unique experience. So anyway,
seems like at some point you could have developed a new system.
Yeah, I know. Right? I just listened to this. I literally wore the album out. My band director bought a new one because I had played it so many times. It was largely unusable. And memorized all the tunes on there, and then decided I wanted to go to Michigan State. And just as I was graduating from high school, a month after I graduated, Dr. Falcone passed away. So I was super bummed out because I never had the opportunity to meet him. and just sort of heard the legends. So I showed up at Michigan State fall of 1985. And then sometime over the course of that year, it was announced that there would be a competition in his memory. And so the Leonard Falcone Euphonium competition started, which it's now the Leonard Falcone International Euphonium and Tuba Festival. But at the time, this was a much simpler time. And so there were two divisions. There was an artist level and a student level. And it was sort of just an open competition. So there was an age requirement. And
I'm just
you could play whatever repertoire you wanted.
I'm just processing. This was during the Cold War.
It was indeed. Yeah. That's not a joke. That's literally true.
It's literally true. This is like pre-Chernobyl.
Yep. It's pre a lot of things.
Pre a lot of our listeners. Yeah.
Well, how old were you in 1986?
1986, I turned 11 in August.
Okay. So there you go. So 86. So then, so there was just an age, you couldn't be 19. You had to be 18 or younger. And I was, but so I had gone through my first year at Michigan State, and I don't even remember that there was a preliminary round. I think there may have been, but don't hold me to that. So there were 3 students and maybe 6 artists, and I think I'm pretty sure Joe Dollard was there, and Mark Dickman, and I want to say Roger Oyster was there, and then a woman named Angie Hunter actually won the artist level that year. So, I mean, pretty amazing artists. And so then the students, it was me. I'm trying to think of the other 2 guys. John Cox, who went on to play in the Air Force Band. He was a student of Roger Barron's. And I'm forgetting the other guy's name. I feel bad about because he came to Michigan State a couple of years after me. But anyway, you got to play whatever you wanted to play. And so I played From the Shores of the Mighty Pacific, which was the first track on the Leonard Falcone and his baritone album. So I was just like super stoked about this tune, and was fortunate enough to win. And I didn't know what I didn't know. So it was just, I was kind of following my nose through the thing. And it was a great honor. And I was really touched to have been a part of that thing. And Blue Lake was significantly different. There was no band shell there like there is now. There was just sort of the stage, and it was kind of out in the open. Now there's a huge shell that covers, the couple of thousand seats that are there. And and actually I remember Brian Bowman was there, and I want to say Roger Barron was there. It was the first time I was around these people that I'd heard of, and that was a very, very different time. So you just sort of heard through the wind who the great players were. And so to have this opportunity to meet people that I'd heard these names of was crazy. Way pre-internet, way pre, lots of, I didn't know of another album. As it turns out, there, of course, were not that many, but there were other albums. I just knew of this one record that had Euphonium on it, it just seems crazy today, because on your phone, you can listen to, days and days worth of Euphonium playing right now if you just put it on.
That's true. Don't know why you would, but that is accurate.
I don't know why you would, but you could. So, and I was able to meet Beryl Falcone, who was Leonard's widow, and she was just she was kind of like everybody's grandmother, cool. And was just such a really nice lady. And actually, speaking of grandmothers, this is forever tied in my head. My great grandmother, my mom's grandmother, Bia, was at that event. She passed away while I was there, and she had told anybody who would listen, that she didn't want to live to be 100 for 15 years. Like, that's all I remember hearing is, I don't want to make it to 100. I don't want to make it to 100. And it was 1 week shy of her 100th birthday. She passed away. So I don't know if those two things are stuck in my head, but I'm rooting for that side of my genetic makeup. So, as we move forward. So then if we fast forward,
please do.
I entered a couple of times. I entered the artist level, but I just was wrapped up in, undergrad, and I was involved in the marching band at Michigan State, and I was like super busy and just didn't really take it seriously. It's funny, this 1-2 punch. with the bonus episode, because the bonus episode talks about what I did when I got to grad school. But as an undergrad, I enjoyed the buffet. I was involved. I mean, I was playing in any group that would let me play in it. I was taking tons of extra classes. I was very social. I was in the marching band. I was doing all this stuff. So I didn't really ever put a full effort into winning the artist level. And then before I knew it, I'm in the Air Force Band. So now I'm disqualified. Well, shortly after joining, within a few years, the organizers of the event asked me to come back and be a guest, and then I judged some, and then sort of periodically I've made these appearances. And just a couple of years ago, they wheeled me up back out on stage, and here's one of the old guys, and they had a friend of yours and mine, Brian Balmages, wrote a piece that I premiered there, the Crossroads Concerto. And so I've been dipping my toes into the event every 3 or 4 years, basically since the beginning of it. And I'm on some sort of board. See, I go to a lot of meetings. But periodically they ask me, I think the last time I was back was for that Brian Balmages thing, which is the 30th anniversary, right, I guess. And then this year was the most recent year that I judged the taped round, or the recorded round, right, I should say. So Marty Erickson is in charge of the judging. It's kind of a who's who. Earl Lauder is involved, and Gail Robertson and Phil Cinder and Marty Erickson. And it's just a kind of a great list of people affiliated with this thing. It's a labor of love. I mean, it's really a wonderful thing. And they're giving away buckets of money every year, which is awesome.
That is great.
And actually, I believe it might be, don't hold me to this either, but I think it's one of the longest running competitions devoted to a specific instrument. And if you think about it, I mean, compared to, like, say, piano, I'm sure there are, I mean, I know that there are others, but for 32 years now, 33 years, there's this festival that's devoted to euphonium and now tuba. So the first, I can't remember when tuba came in, 5, 6, 7 years after that, then it became a tuba euphonium contest. And then now it's this full-fledged festival.
So cool. Solo competitions are not, have never been my thing at all, and yet I'm super happy that this exists and is thriving. I think it's great. I think it's really great.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, I shouldn't say this, but I'm of mixed feelings about it as well. I don't, not to say that you are, but I think on one hand, the tail ends up wagging the dog to some degree. I think it can become a bit of a like a sporting event mentality. But on the other hand, it really pushes young players. It's something for young players to strive for and to try and achieve, and it helps sort of get you on the map, and it helps get you used to the audition process. So I'm not that cantankerous, get out of my front yard yet anyway, but
I think it.
Yeah,
I think it's get off the lawn. It's not get out of my front yard.
Well, I'm polite, so I'm a polite, cantankerous guy.
Please exit the premises.
Pardon me, whippersnapper.
So
I don't. Greetings, youngster. So let's talk a bit about the process as it stands. So I was approached in February, March. Would I listen to the recorded round? And it's always with mixed feelings that I accept that, because it's on the one hand, I'm honored and flattered that I'm asked to do it. And on the other hand, it's a freak ton of work. It's really, really a lot of work. And so Marty hit me up and I said I would do it. And so what it entails is there are 4 divisions. If you're not familiar, there are 2 euphonium divisions, a student and an artist, and then likewise for tuba. So they have a panel of 3 per category, 3 judges per category listen to the recorded round, and then there's another slate of different judges that are there in the summer that will listen to the preliminary round. So when if you make it past the tape round, then you go to Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp in August, and you'll play an unaccompanied round behind a screen, and accompanied round behind the screen, and then for the finals, there's no screen, and it's either with piano accompaniment or, well, for the students, it's always with piano accompaniment. With the artists, it alternates years. Some 1 year Tuba is on with piano accompaniment, and the Euphonium is with band. Actually, that might have changed by now too. Those, they might all be with the faculty band now. But anyway, that's with the full panel of judges, the final 3 players. So the first round, there's, well, for the Euphonium artists, I can tell you there were 48 candidates. So there's well over 100. There's about 150 or so applicants across the board over the 4 divisions. And so I listened to the artists, and then that number, the number of people who get invited, I believe, is still 10 plus an alternate, or there might be 2 alternates. So my job then is to listen to these 48 candidates who are all playing the same piece, which was not my favorite piece, but what are you going to do? And it was Euphonium or something like that. I can't remember how to pronounce it. And I have since got Hidges. I'm standing by that. So
if you say anything fast enough,
I listened to the 48. Right, yeah, I don't know how to. Okay, you want me to look it up? Well, you don't really care, do you? Hidges.
There are people who are listening who care.
Yeah, but the ones who care already know.
Well, there's yes.
Euphonia. There you go. Frigyes Hiddes. I don't know how to pronounce his name. So Frigys, Hiddes, Hidas.
There you go.
And he's written. I mean, he's written a bunch of brass stuff. Euphoniada.
I just wanted to hear you try and say all those words a few more times.
Euphoniada. So we have about around a month to get this done, and so you figure each recording. So this is where, well, I'll kind of give you the overview, and then we'll dive in a little bit about the experience. So I have 48 that I need to listen to. About 15 of them paid an extra, I believe, $50 to get written comments from the 3 preliminary round judges. So those folks, I prepared a list of, I basically just created a template with an opening statement, and then I put bullet pointed comments on the things that I heard.
To interject here, I understand that students of this age are frequently poor, but for the love of all things holy, if you can get comments from not just 3 random people, but 3 of the people that Lance mentioned before for $50, then holy crap, do that. Because you also have then a recording of what they're commenting on. So you can go back and listen to your own recording and get that kind of feedback from 3 different perspectives. That's worth way more than $50. So eat rice and beans for a month if that's what it takes to be able to pay the $50. You put in all that work, pay the $50 and rant.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. So I created this sort of bullet list in real time. Here's the stuff I'm hearing. Here's the stuff I'm hearing. And then at the end, I created a paragraph, which was the takeaways. In general, you have these sorts of issues. I suggest this approach to try and solving these, and I wish you well. And I felt it's one of these things. I'm sure I've told this story before, where I met Ryan McGeorge at this competition that Brian Bowman ran at George Mason. And I said, this is Ryan McGeorge, he's a Marine. Hey, nice to meet you. Do I know you? You look familiar to me. And he's, yes, you judged and coached me at the Falcone competition. And I said, oh, was I nice to you? And he said, nope.
I love that story.
I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I said, was it helpful? And he said, yes. So in these comments, I didn't pull any punches. I wasn't like setting out to be mean, but I was very direct. And I just sort of said what I thought. And I just feel like I know that that's tough for some. I think some students bristle at that. I mean, it's uncomfortable. And I've had pushback from people before, but I don't feel like I'm doing anybody any favors if I'm like sugarcoating it. I'm just telling you what I hear. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to. I mean, they asked me to judge. You asked for comments. These are my comments. And so I tried not to. I mean, there's a difference between being mean or rude and being direct. And I was just trying to be as direct and honest.
So
as
without
I could
naming
be.
who it was, can you share the story of the really good pushback that you got once?
Well, that was that same. I don't know if it was that same year, but it was at that same event at George Mason. One of the contestants came up afterwards and dressed me down and said that they had listened to all of the contestants from, I want to say, the dressing room or some off stage or someplace they sort of got in, and they couldn't understand why this person, why they weren't chosen to win. And actually, Jamie Lipton was the winner, and she's freaking awesome. Actually, we interviewed her early on in the Brass Junkies. And she actually, I've judged with her a number of times at the Falcone when I've gone. And when I was there the last time she was there, she teaches on the staff there, and she's just fantastic. So anyway, this person was accusing me of like rigging it, that it was rigged and was rigged with the other judges. And I just kept... I mean, I what do you do with somebody like that? I was just sort of standing there listening to all of it and sort of addressing all of the things that this person was saying. And ultimately, I just said, you need to take it. You need to take a step back. You need to like lower your intensity level. You need to think about what you're saying. I was trying to be, at least as I remembered, I was trying to keep my cool and then let this young person know that what they were doing is a bad idea. There's just no good can come of this. Like we're going to all of a sudden going to say, oh, you're right. We're going to take this award away from Jamie Lipton and we're going to give it to you. I mean, let's say you believed that it was rigged, and let's say that you believed that that you should have won. Well, the best that you could do would be to approach the judges and say, hey, what did you hear? Like, how can I, because that's useful. Like then because, okay. Well, the way I was approaching it was in your mind, you say, well, I was approaching it this way. The judges were looking for this other thing. And that's useful to know. So I can either apply it or not. I remember when I left the Air Force Band audition, I walked out the door and I thought, before I knew whether I'd won or not, I thought I did exactly what I wanted to do. I felt like I played how I wanted to play, and if they didn't pick me, it's because they don't like the kind of player I am. And there's like a piece in that. So if you get chosen or you don't get chosen, but you feel like you did your best, then you can at least sleep at night. So I totally understand that, and I appreciate the tenacity. But at some point, like it's to believe that someone's out to get you, or that this is somehow rigged, or that it's just like and
that person is still around. So yeah,
that person is still around.
We've all made mistakes. I've never done anything like that. You've made mistakes. I've been there for them, and I've made mistakes. You've been there for them too. So but this is one of those things where, and also you don't know what you sounded like in the hall. That's the other thing, is that
no way.
I guess almost 2 years ago now, Mallory Thompson brought put together a Northwestern alumni brass ensemble to celebrate her 20th year conducting SWE. And it was ridiculous. The people there were people from the Chicago Symphony, Boston Symphony, all the service bands, St. Louis Symphony, just everywhere. It was incredible. And anyway, we were playing an arrangement of Lincolnshire Posy. And there's one of those licks in the middle movements where the low brass comes in on on like the end of one or something like that. And Dr. Thompson, whose ears I unconditionally trust, she said, she looked at me and she said, after we stopped, she said, Andrew, you were late on this entrance. And I thought that I was pretty sure I wasn't late, and I trust her. She's not making anything up. She's never once in my presence ever just said something because she needs to criticize, like to pass the time. So I was like, all right. So I then really dialed in and we did it again. And then she said, it's still behind. And at that point, I heard it. And again, it wasn't quote unquote late. on my side of the bell. And yet it was by the time it got up to her, and I was playing with trombones that were up in the upper register. Anyway, there was trombone sound hitting her ear, and then a split second later was my tuba sound. Even though back where I was, we were perfectly lined up. I was pretty sure the first time. We were perfectly lined up the second time, and yet it wasn't right. We did it again, and then I was way on the front of the beat, and she made the kissing motion, and it was perfect, and then we went on. But it's better to sound right than to be right. Anyway, long story short, you don't know what the hell you sounded like in the hall. So even if this was appropriate, you were not sitting out there for all of them, because you were not sitting out there for you. So like, you do not have the same perspective that all of the judges had. So, and that's not the headline right. Compared to, wow, you actually think there's a global conspiracy against you, and you're sharing that with people at the top of your profession in an accusatory way. That's a much bigger infraction. But just also know that you actually don't have the same perspective that the judges do ever. So, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I remember I thought you guys were nuts. You kept telling me that when I joined the quintet, like, you need to play with harder tongue. You need this needs to be louder. And I thought, this is hazing. This is like, I'm being punked. And I listened to the recording, and it's like, well, no. I've met 0 people. I've judged a whole bunch. And I have met 0 people who actively like try to screw others
me too.
up. I can't think of a single time when someone, I mean, and there's some
I've met some people who don't ever try to put it in the nicest way possible, that they're not really teaching, that they're just kind of, they're just being asses. But I've never met anybody who did that just in someone's direction intentionally when they were giving wrong information just for their own amusement or to sabotage them ever.
Yeah,
ever. Nope.
No, it doesn't happen. So, get off of my
grass. Certainly not. And they're certainly not doing that so that they have the ability to choose a woman in Jamie Lipton over a white dude. Like it's like, I think,
right,
Anyway, so
man. So heading back, so the comment, I wrote comments for 15 of them, and then the other part that is understandable but also frustrating from the judge's perspective and really difficult is that in order to have it be as fair as possible, they ask us to rank the players from number 1 all the way down to number 48. And I got to use whatever it is tough. I got to use whatever ranking system I wanted. I developed a ranking system, and I just had a kind of a chart, and I'm going to give roughly this many points for, I think I had sort of intonation, tone quality, musicality, sass, dynamics, rhythm, and some of those things. Sass, that's right. Sass. And I weighted the musical interpretation more than I did dynamic contrast. So it was like, those were equal. But I had some kind of guideline, and then I would come up with a score, and then I just sort of had to, trying to keep track of 48 folks and getting it right from 1 down to 48 takes a lot of brain power.
It's still very challenging and taxing to put them in tiers, because it's pretty obvious, like right away, if this is like, tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. But then the problem is that if someone's, the putting someone in the top of tier 2, which is like, 14th versus, like 23rd or 28th, that's really hard. So to just kind of keep track of all that over time too, because you can't do that all in one sitting, or you'll lose your mind.
Right, and so that's right, and it's very time consuming. So I was just sort of working out. It's at least, well, the tune, and this was kind of fascinating. This is where it got really interesting to me. There were I would say the average length of recording was right around 10 minutes and change. But there were people who went from the low 9-minute range all the way up to over 12 minutes long. And in a couple of instances, I would say that the people with the 12-minute plus recordings, I kind of had the sense that they weren't as mature of players as others, but other times it was just clearly a musical decision. Like, I feel like this phrase should go at this speed. And it wasn't about the quality of player, but it was about a decision that they made about how they wanted to interpret it. But anyway, so if you average it out at 10 minutes, I'm in for 480 minutes of active listening. Now, that doesn't count when I'm hitting pause so I can write a note or have to do whatever. And the ones who required comments, those were usually in the 20 to 30 minutes on top of, it's like I'm spending another 20 or 30 minutes to create the notes in addition to the 10 minutes of the performance. So it's just a lot of time, and it's a lot of information to try and sort out. And you're sitting there, headphones on for hours and hours and hours, and it's like you said, I bless you to the person who could do this all in one sitting. No. I am not that person. So then to try and kind of get my ears right, so I did it over the course of about 3 days, maybe 4 days, and to try and recalibrate where my ears were based on the previous day took a little while as well. So I had to kind of go back and listen, review my notes from the previous day and kind of look at, this is kind of how I remember the tune and da-da-da-da-da. And then the first one that I would listen to on, say, day 2 or day 3, I would have to take a lot more time on that first one to make sure that I was giving them a fair assessment compared to the people that I heard before. So
it's great. Well, and also all of these kids have spent so much time preparing and getting a recording and doing all of that of course they deserve the absolute. You can't just have them be, I don't know, the day when you're hungry and you don't realize it, and so you're just grading lower, or that it's the 12th one you've listened to is almost always going to be graded a little lower than the third one. It's like you owe it to them, because I've done things like, not for Falcone, but I've judged tape rounds of competitions before for Tuba conferences, things like that. Yeah, it's hard because they deserve what they deserve. So yeah.
Well, so it was funny when going back to Russell Edders, he asked me some questions, like, as I mentioned, in a very sensitive manner, because his son had entered and didn't advance. And so he was like, what can he do to because I had no idea who anybody was. I just got Euphonium artist 23 or whatever it was. So I have no clue who anybody was. And he knew that. And he wasn't asking specifically, but what kinds of things made the difference. And his specific question was, how big of a difference did the recording quality make? And it's a funny thing. It's not everything, but it's not nothing. So what would happen is, in the first few seconds, I could kind of get a sense of, oh boy, the recording quality on this one is terrible. So now I have to kind of, again, recalibrate in my head. Okay, based on knowing that the euphonium player is way too far away from the microphone, I need to, now knowing that, I need to try and assess tone quality, vibrato, dynamics through that lens. And so it does make it more challenging, but I didn't automatically say, well, this person's not going to advance because the recording quality is not good. It had nothing to do with that, because you can still get a sense of tone. Once you know that the tone quality is the way it is on the recording, then you can compare it to itself. Is it consistent? Is it supported? Are they playing through the ends of phrases? Is it the same tone quality in all the registers? So when they're up high and when they're down low, does it hold together the way it did in the middle range? So even if it was not, CD release-able, in terms of the quality, I can tell whether it's consistent or not. So that
I tell my students that all the time when they're practicing, that even if they're in a practice room, that there's something to be said for just recording a super short chunk, like I'm talking like a measure or 4 notes. If you're right from the stand in front of you, and don't compare that to your favorite, trombone sound on an Empire Brass recording from the 80s. But you can tell if it's consistently bad, that's one thing. If it's inconsistently bad, that's another. And then you can even from there, when you're practicing as a tangent, you can look for patterns. And it's like, oh, actually, it's like B naturals are always different. Or, when I get to mezzo piano or lower, then it's different, et cetera. And so you don't always have to have a great room to record in, et cetera. So, and I will, one more thing I will add is that the lower you go, the more important the recording quality is, I believe, because tuba, if tuba already has some clarity issues, and if tuba is recorded really poorly, then what we are hearing is not representative of what's coming out of your bell, and it's really hard at that point. So, an oboe, I think it's less important to have a great recording, and it's still better. But but tuba, it just like the cleanliness of everything is just so important. And when you're listening to these things over and over and over again, and then all of a sudden, like a tuba quartet or a tuba artist from the Falcone or whatever is like really clear, then that jumps out at you right away. And then that actually makes you lean in and force you, even if you're the 18th one in a row, to listen for the storytelling, for the dynamic contrast, for the interpretation, for all of the rest of it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. I wondered, and this is impossible to know, I wonder how many, like the ones that had bad recording quality, I was curious, and there's no way to know, how many of them listened to the recording before they sing it. It sounds ridiculous, but it's an interesting, and sometimes it's just unavoidable. This is the equipment that I have. This is the accompanist that I have. This is the time that I have. And so it's totally understandable. I mean, I've been in that position as well. So you have to do the best with what you have.
One quick plug for if anybody wasn't listening back over the summer last year, we had a couple of bonus episodes for our Patreon patrons, which was Andrew Doherty, who's a former student of mine who won the West Point Band audition about a year ago now. And he did an interview with me where he detailed all of his prep and all of his like the entire process that he went through for preparation and making the recording and the timeline and everything, and then gave a really vivid description of the day and what happened and how it went down and what excerpts, and it was great. We're turning that into a book, which is going to be available for purchase. But and also, if you become a patron, as we mention all the time, you have access to all of the previous bonus episodes right away for as little as $1 per episode. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because part of the story is that he made a recording of for the West Point Band, and he made a recording and brought it into David Federley, his teacher, who's had a lot of not only won the Baltimore Symphony audition himself back in the day, but also has had a lot of students who have won them. And he played it for him, and right away, Federley was like, "The recording is not good enough. You have to do it again." Just boom, there was no pulling punches. And Andrew, it's not like he was like, "Oh, I was hoping you were going to say that," but I think he was thankful that he got that advice. So yeah, in terms of listening to it, be sure you listen to it to make sure that what you're doing, all that hard work, needs to be getting into those mics, or else, you need to figure out something else.
Yeah. Save the money and don't apply this year. I mean, that sounds harsh, but so the other, I know we're getting kind of long here. The other sort of most interesting thing to me about the process was that it actually fell out pretty clear. I was, two more things. One was I had two students, one enter the student level and one enter the artist level. And they didn't know that I didn't know whether I was judging the artist or the student level. I didn't tell them until after they had already applied that I was going to be judging the prelims. And then thankfully, I had no idea when my student played. I couldn't tell at all. And unfortunately, she didn't advance. So that was a bummer as well. And to know that I had a part in that it's like this mixed, it's tough. I mean, I called it like I heard it. And so I was on both sides of it. So I heard her recording. I heard her recording. I mean, she plays the daylights out of the horn. I thought the recording sounded really good. Man, she's got a really good chance. Same with the student. I thought these two are playing really well, and these two are really good recordings. And they just didn't get it. It means, there were that many more players that did a better job than them. So you just have to have faith in the process, even though it hurts sometimes. But one of the other interesting thing that I was getting at was it fell into kind of three categories. I mean, there were sort of a clump of players towards the top, clump of players towards the bottom, and then a large clump in the middle of people who were pretty good.
Right.
It was all pretty good. And what was fascinating to me was, and I should have like quantified this so I could say it, but so I could say the specific numbers. But in general, the people at either end, the people who did really well or that didn't do so well at the bottom end of the ratings, those people, way more of them asked for comments than the people in the middle, which is fascinating to me. It's the way I, sussed it out is the people who were excellent are looking for ways to become ever more excellent. And the people who were, let's just say, at the opposite end were self-aware enough to go, this is a huge learning opportunity there. And I don't want to put it could be that it was for financial reasons. If you didn't do it, it could be, there's a million reasons somebody might not have asked for comments. So I don't mean for it to sound as sharp of a quality judgment as it's coming out, but I just found it very interesting that this vast grouping in the middle that not more of them. It was a disproportionate amount of people were in the middle of the pack. And there were a smaller group at the bottom and smaller group at the top, and a disproportionate amount of those people didn't ask for comments. There's something there.
You got to get into the feedback loop. You got to get into the feedback loop. And when you have the opportunity to get feedback from the world's best people, and it's feedback on what is your best work, and it is feedback against against the backdrop of the people who are your peers and their best work. That's good Lord. They could charge $500 for that and it would be worth it. And they shouldn't. I mean, don't get me wrong. That would be ridiculous and punitive, but you gotta do it. I mean, borrow it from your grandmother. Put a fundraiser up on GoFundMe. Yeah. No, I need $50. That's it to get comments.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's it. You got three pros listening to you. And so, I mean, if you went and got 3 lessons from those pros, let's say you only liked one of those 3 people, that would cost you $100 easy. So now you're going to get 3 times that. You're going to get a page-long, assessment of your playing.
Doesn't include getting
for
there.
$50.
Yeah.
So it's what, $18 per judge or something like that. I don't know. I mean, I sound like, please get off of my turf. That guy again.
You are inadvertently trespassing.
Yeah. Interloper.
Was there one more thing that you needed to say, or is that it?
All right. So that was it. No, I think that was all of it. I mean, I'm honored to still be a part of it. I'm touched that they asked me to do it. I think it's a fantastic event. It's run. It's very familial. If you go and you're a part of this thing, then you join this family. And especially when Beryl has passed away a couple of years ago now. In fact, shortly after my last performance there. So I was really touched that I got to see her again and give her a big hug. But that familial approach is still there, and it's kind of baked into the experience. And so it's a group that hangs together, and very, very proud to have been a part of it for as long as I have. And, I highly encourage anybody to
good stuff, man. There we go. Well, thank you, Russ, for the topic, which we a specific question and then turned it into an hour, because that's our gift. Oh goodness. Yep. We're known for our brevity.
Brevity. Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
concise
yes,
fashion,
indeed. All right. Well, Lance, you did a good job, man.
Hey, how about that? Right, even a blind squirrel.
Even a blind squirrel.
We'll get a nut in someone's front turf from time to time.
Of my front lawn. That's pretty good. That's going to come back up, I think. So, all right. Well, that is going to do it for another episode of the Brass Junkies. You've been listening to the Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to hear the bonus episode featuring today's guest, please visit patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to learn how you can support the show and instantly access all bonus materials, as well as gain access to a special patron-only Facebook group. The Brass Junkies is produced by the amazing, wonderful, and truly inspirational Will Houchin. The theme music was composed by Fernando Dados and performed by Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. We are at Pray for Jens on Twitter and Instagram and have a Facebook page at facebook.com/prayforjens. You can find out more about the Brass Junkies and all the other Pedal Note Media podcasts at pedalnotemedia.com. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.